Hello and welcome to Aspen Affairs, the show where we dive into issues shaping the community and provide a platform for dialogue with local leaders. I'm Debbie Braun, president of the Aspen Chamber, and today we're focusing on the upcoming City Council election. Dun 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 dun! Joining me are two passionate individuals who have stepped up to serve our community, Tyler Wilkinson-Ray and Scot Wooley. I want to remind our viewers that the Aspen City Council election is scheduled for March 4th. Early voting begins on February 18th, and ballots are going to be mailed to registered voters on February 10th. Your participation in this election is crucial for our community. Today, our format will be a dynamic discussion where we're going to alternate questions between our two guests, give each of them the opportunity to share their vision for Aspen, and tell us a little bit more about themselves. Tyler, Scot, welcome to Aspen Affairs.
Great to be here.
Thanks. Tyler, I'm going to start with you. I was saying before the show, I hadn't met either one of you, so it would be wonderful if you could just introduce yourself and tell us what inspired you to run for City Council.
Thanks for having us. So I run a small photo video production studio in Aspen, so I actually do marketing materials for a lot of the ACRA members.
Yeah.
And our sort of focus is offering creative services in Aspen to that you normally would only find in like a big city. So we have very high-end cameras, and we really try to offer professional creative services to companies here and businesses here. And it also allows me to interact with a lot of variety of different businesses and kind of hear what's going on and how they're doing. I also have a background in government affairs. I spent a couple of years back in Vermont working for what's commonly ranked the #1 government affairs and policy firm in Montpelier, so suit and tie every day. But I got to spend a couple of years working under some very smart attorneys on how to craft good policy. And I think that was one of the main reasons that made me want to run, is seeing well-intentioned leadership in council, but maybe not with the background to lead the city forward, which as we move from what seems like small town issues into much more complex, small city issues that we, maybe need someone with a little background in this stuff. Great,
thank you. Scot, hello.
Hi.
Tell us about yourself and why you decided to run.
Well, nice to meet you, Debbie. I'm born and raised Aspen local.
Okay.
My mom was a teacher here for 25 plus years. My dad started the Aspen Carriage Company.
Okay.
And I'm the adopted grandson of Fritz and Fabi Benedict.
Okay.
So I have deep roots in the community. I've spent the last 10 years doing business abroad, but I have a background in environmentalism, entrepreneurship, and education. And like Tyler, I think it's time for fresh leadership, young leadership, and some decisive action here in Aspen. So I want to be part of a positive change that leads to a positive community for the rest of our generations to come.
Thank you. Well, then let's just start with some easy questions, okay? Let's start with the entrance to Aspen. The entrance, Tyler, remains really a contentious topic. What's your perspective on how the city should address this issue while balancing accessibility with environmental concerns?
Well, I think it's a very complicated question. Obviously, entrance to Aspen is a huge issue. I used to live in Woody Creek and had to deal with the entrance all the time, and I think we're asking the people who clean our houses and serve our food to have a serious impact on their quality of life. I also think on the other side, if you build it, they will come. So if we build too much car-focused infrastructure, then people will drive more cars, and that's not what we want. I do think for this issue, I think putting it out to the voters on such a contentious thing is the right move. I think rather than asking 5 people to make such a big decision for our city, that putting it out to the voters is the right thing. And then I think if 2 doesn't pass, then I think we need to go back to the drawing board and look at a new study and get updated data as we go forward.
Okay. Scot, what is your stance on the best approach to improve the entrance to Aspen, and how do you plan to address traffic and community concerns?
It's a good question. I was 10 years old when the preferred alternative passed here in our community. Again, like Tyler, I believe in the power of democracy and that the voters should have a choice. For me, the entrance to Aspen is only one part of a silver buckshot problem that we really need to find solutions to. We need to develop incremental solutions to what needs to be a modernized infrastructure. So there are lots of kind of choke points leading up to the entrance to Aspen that will need to be addressed eventually, but I truly believe that the entrance needs to be resolved, mostly because it's been such a divisive issue for so many years, and it's created so much gridlock and disenfranchisement amongst the Aspen electorate that it's time for us to move on and be an innovative and progressive community again.
Well, we probably thought we were moving on after the first, second, third, fourth, fifth, sixth, seventh, eighth, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 20 votes.
Isn't that true?
I think from a business perspective, we talk about not changing a home rule charter, that the charter is very important, and changing that has some significant effects on our community potentially. And then infrastructure projects, turning that over to the voter, that sometimes we feel like is a little unnerving. So it'll be really interesting to see how both 1 and 2 fare.
And I just
Go ahead.
to
Yeah.
add one thing, I think it's important to take a step back and look at how we got to where we are today, and that we saw massive growth in construction in town. That was, I think, largely underregulated. I wish leadership also with how we handled Airbnb, effectively giving anybody who wanted a permit instead of rolling out permits as our infrastructure and housing allowed. So we basically had a loss of housing, massive growth of visitors in Airbnb without the workforce to support those people locally, and then a massive construction boom. And of course, those are the people who can't take RAFTA, right? Those are the plumbers, electricians. So we basically, I think we let construction go wild without really thinking about what the impact was going to be on our community. And now we're in this hyper contentious thing where I think if we had better leadership earlier on, we could have avoided how bad this problem got.
What do you think?
Well, again, it's a systems level problem. We have transportation, which is connected to affordable housing, which is connected to an imbalance in our economy. We have huge disparities towards residential services right now. Our entire economy is distorted, and all of these things are interconnected in a wicked way. And so while a lot of candidates during this process are going to propose silver buckshot solutions that I know what to do, it's really complicated, and we're going to need to take, like I said, incremental change, incremental steps to address it through affordable housing, through transportation infrastructure, and through really decisive policies at the leadership level so that we can stop bickering over 30-year-old problems and, like I said, become a progressive community again. We have the resources, we have the intelligence, we have the voters to do it. So.
Yep,
Yeah.
I would agree with that.
Well, moving on to one of my favorite subjects is the historic armory. So, Scott, the Armory Hall project is significant for the community. What's your visions for its future, and how do you propose managing its renovation within the budget constraints?
Yeah, again, another good question, specifically because in our community we've been running out of third spaces. A lot of the community intersections that used to exist in our town have dried up or disappeared over the last several decades. I still love the way that it feels when you get in a gondola with a group of people you don't know, and you instantly have a way to connect, and there's some common ground. So I love the idea that the Armory is going to be a community space. I love the idea that it could provide a platform for our community to come together. As a former restaurateur and business owner, I am reticent to say I'm excited about the city running a restaurant, and I'm worried about that. However, for me, budget can always be solved. We have $200 million in the city budget. We have innovative community members who are part of our community, and we have a lot of resources that we can bring to bear to make this an important space. But for me, the values behind it are going to be the most important thing. I don't want to see us subsidizing restaurants at the cost of other small businesses who are trying to operate without it. I do want to see us finding more ways to provide affordable services to our community and third spaces.
I don't think currently they're talking about affordable restaurants. I mean, there's some grab and go, but up on that third
Right.
floor, it is a bar and a couple restaurants.
Right.
Do you think that there are enough people in this community, especially during the off seasons, to make that whole entire building okay with just food and bars. I mean, I'm not sure there's a lot of community space that's been put towards it.
Yeah, I think that's a fair concern, and that's one of the reasons that I'm worried about us running, or a city government running a business in this town, especially competing with local restaurateurs who have been putting decades into the industry and have fought tooth and claw to succeed in this community. I do think that there are spaces for us to provide, revenue to it. We've lost Eric's, we've lost the cigar bar, we've lost pool halls, we've lost spaces for recreation. And that's before we even mention the generosity of so many people who live in this community who might want to support something like that.
Yeah. Tyler, as someone new to city government, how would you prioritize funding and design of the Armory Hall to ensure that's going to meet that community need?
I think I agree with Scott that let's find the vision that we think is going to work in the long term, and let's find the funds to do it versus rushing through a project that's going to end up not serving our community in the long run. I'd love to see a mixed-use space. I was slightly disappointed, or very disappointed, when I heard it was proposed for more city offices. I think we have to be careful of just...
that was ACRA offices, not city offices, but that's okay. We still have a visitor center in there.
I thought it was proposed, but I would like to see us keep it as a mixed-use space. I think some food and restaurants is very needed, but I don't know if we need to be running a food court just entirely. I agree. I thought it restaurant heavy in the current proposal.
Yeah, it felt like people wanted community gathering spaces, and they voted on that, and then it seems like it turned into more food and bars, which that's okay too, but I feel like they're fast tracking it, the permitting now, and it's not even going through HPC and some of the other places that it should. If you guys got elected, do you think you'd want to slow down a little bit and relook at that, or do you trust the current council's position and you'll be supporting that moving forward?
I would certainly want to revisit it. I was at the council meeting when the proposal for the restaurant space was kind of submitted, and they said that they would get they were confident they'd get $2.5 million in revenue annually, and I think that as an opening business in a community space in a city property in Aspen, Colorado, might be a bit of a stretch. Like you said, how many community members are available to patronize the establishment, and also where are we going to find the balance between revenue and community benefit? So we need to find, I think we need to address that, and what the voters did say and what we chose isn't really being followed through. Again, this is an example of where we have leadership that has maybe a good initial idea, but then isn't decisive in their execution. And that's why I think some young leadership and fresh ideas.
And childcare seemed like it was a high community need.
Right.
When it was put out to the
Absolutely.
And I'm not sure where that left the conversation, because it seemed like actually childcare was number one, and then affordable eatery number two. And so I was surprised. I'm not sure when that left the conversation, but that seems like a very high priority in town.
Yeah. Michael Goldberg is our restaurant representative for the Aspen Chamber, and we did poll our restaurants and said, are you paying attention? And a lot of them don't, because they're understaffed, it's the middle of the season, and a lot of stuff is rapidly going, and I fear that when you get to the point of we need to pull the trigger, that's when a lot of community comes in and says, what are you guys doing? So I'm hoping we still have a really robust outreach program as we work on the Armory. I think it's great the visitor center is going to be in there, because we see about 100,000 people a year. So while the locals might know about the Armory, I think it's a good way to push people into the building as well. And I like that kind of messy vitality between visitors and our community intersecting there in the Armory.
What used to be the J Bar.
Yes, exactly. Okay, let's talk about affordable housing, because funny enough, we just did our advocacy survey at the Chamber, and no surprise, the number one issue for business is affordable housing. Transportation comes in second, and that's really probably no big surprise, but it's getting more and more difficult. So, Scott, I'm going to start with you again. The Aspen affordable housing is a pressing concern in Aspen. What specific policy or initiative would you advocate to increase housing options?
increase housing options. Well, to start, I should say I grew up in APSHA housing, and I'm a member of the APSHA board.
Okay.
To begin with, I need to reemphasize that we've done an amazing job creating an innovative program over the last 50 years that has been replicated around North America. So before I get into what we need to change, I want to honor the work that's been done in the past. However, we need to modernize a lot of the policies involved with affordable housing, including the numbers for access and qualification, and the ability for APSHA tenants to egress out of that housing stock into either the free market or into another community. There are obviously specific things that we can do. I think that there are probably some more highfalutin ideas. For example, I've been talking about why don't we invest in a indexed fund for every APSHA tenant who enters a housing stock that will accrue compound interest over the 30 years that they live in our community, and then use that as a way for them to sunset out of the housing. Something that won't impact the city budget and the county budget to the extent that I think the treasurer is probably afraid of. But the reality is we do need to provide some sort of not golden ticket, but some sort of way out for these people who are getting stuck in our housing stock. At the same time, we need to address the availability and qualification metrics that we're using for people that are trying to enter into the housing stock so that we can maintain a community-focused workforce housing program here in the Aspen Valley.
Great. I'm going to ask you the same question, but I'll repeat it.
Sure, thank you.
Just, it's a pressing concern, obviously. What specific policies or initiatives would you advocate for to increase the housing options?
Well, I'd also agree that Aspen's done a great job building an affordable housing stock. Unfortunately, just the old systems just don't work anymore. We've seen rapid growth. Our town has grown so much more than our housing for our workforce. This is just because there is no free market affordable housing anymore. There used to, when I first came here, I lived in private housing. Now I have to live in APSHA. I don't have to, but it's great to live it. So I think we just have to come up with new tools for developing new housing. And yes, trying to encourage people to move on. But like right now, our site in lieu fee is generating about $700,000, and it costs per unit, and the lumberyard's about $1 million. So we're still even now falling behind. So I think increasing maybe a graduated in lieu fee, so we can be generating, because these massive houses, they need maybe 6 to 10 people to work on these houses. So as these houses get bigger and bigger, I think you should pay more in lieu site fee. That's just like one idea. I think maybe in the short term, I think how we handled the Airbnb permits was a huge problem. We added a lot more residents and lost housing for people to serve those. So I think that's kind of water under the bridge. I don't think we can go back on those permits, but maybe in the short term, until we can get places like the lumberyard open, things like a buyback program, where we buy back permits, or go to landlords and say, hey, we're not going to get you to what you got from Airbnb, but we'll get you 75% of the way there. The resident pays some, fees from Airbnb pay the others, so we can get. And I think a lot of people would say, hey, if I don't have to deal with Airbnb rentals, I'll rent to a local. I'm not going to lose 75% of my income from my Airbnb. So finding ways to get APSHA, kind of spread out APSHA into getting people back into other units.
Yeah.
One more quick thing to add. I think that there is room for us to work with planning and zoning to develop mechanisms for us to build more kind of creative and innovative housing options in our valley, as well as holding to account and enforcing some of the existing codes that we have for developers. We have a lot of language and policies in our community that try to encourage workforce housing development, ADUs, when developments happen, and there's not a lot of enforcement or holding to account there. So there's definitely room on the policy side for that as well.
And I agree. Instead of we look at these silver bullets, maybe that's the lumberyard, but also getting creative with our policy. Telluride did a good job of encouraging redevelopment to put ADUs in the back. So we've capped demo permits to 6. So what if we say, if you want to jump the line, you build an ADU in the back that goes out in the alley and rent it to Aspen for 10 years and then you can keep it. But like just those small things that we can, again, spread out our workforce and get creative with our policy instead of looking for these big mega projects.
Yeah, and I really realize that the city of Aspen can't solve the problem. Pitkin County's trying, businesses are trying as well. Large employers are going out and purchasing land and building as well. So
And that's one other, I think, policy idea. Just taking myself, for example, first place I lived in, the school board bought it, which we love the school board, but they're able to leverage, bond $100 million and buy housing. Next place I was living, I got kicked out by Highmax Realty because they wanted to put their workers in there. So these big players in town, these restaurant groups, they have the ability to go buy worker housing. So I think as we move forward, taking some of that housing stock that we're building and reserving it for small businesses, 5 to 10 employees, because those are the people, if you're running a small restaurant and you're local, you don't have a big restaurant group behind you, you can barely pay your restaurant rent.
Right.
Never mind trying to rent housing for your employees.
yeah, I do agree. It's great that the bigger ones can take care of, but then that does leave a lot of retail, restaurant, scrambling for their workforce who now is coming from Rightful. I want to move over to the economy. Scott, Aspen's economy really relies heavily on tourism. What strategies would you propose to diversify the local economy to create sustainable job opportunities?
Tyler spoke to it a little bit, but we really do need to rebalance our economy towards local small business entrepreneurs and startups. I know that in the ACRA survey that there were a lot of participants who felt like the tourism industry wasn't benefiting our community, and that we kind of need to find ways for this tourism that we've created in such an amazing place to benefit all of us in the long run. There are rumors around town about ski company departmentalizing and selling off the resort. This would create, when Jim died, there's a huge rift now between the community and the ski company, and I would really, really like to see us find some innovative ways to solve that. However, there are niche tourism markets that we can explore. Mindfulness, outdoor recreation, education, meditation, ecotourism. There are places that we are not currently exploring that can help balance out the great benefit that luxury tourism does pay to our economy. So this is a wicked problem, but for me, the best thing that we can do is support small businesses, support local entrepreneurs and startups, and maybe even find ways to address the increasing costs of commercial rent in our town, because this is a huge barrier to a lot of the people who would love to have a family in this community and help support our economy and create a 365-day-a-year economy here.
Yeah. Tyler, how would you approach fostering economic growth beyond the tourism sector while preserving Aspen's unique character?
That's a great question. I think we will always be a tourism town. I think that's and I think just expanding our offerings beyond just skiing, and I think like ways to have this town. People come to Aspen because it's not Vail. It's not a planned resort community. So I think keeping that messy vitality, doing public art, that kind of stuff, to keep this town feeling like a real interesting town, and then exploring other kind of like ecotourism and those kind of solutions are great. And I think also just key to our ability to keep the economy going is to be able. Aspen's in a very unique place where it's, I do a lot of marketing and branding. It already has an incredible brand and marketing. I don't know if we need more marketing. What we need to be able to make sure is that we can deliver on that experience, so that when people come, they don't, they come to Aspen for the first time with an idea of what this place is, and then they come and the whole town's under construction, or their, restaurant reservation got canceled because the restaurant had to close because one person got sick because they're so understaffed. Right. I used to live in Telluride, and after COVID, when all the college kids went back, there were 3 businesses in town who just said, we can't do it anymore. We don't have workers. We're just going to close. And we have much more elasticity in our workforce because of our down valley, but I don't think we should be too overconfident and just the strain that, we don't want to see businesses that are only open Thursday, Friday, Saturday. That's, I think, one of the big, challenges that we have.
Well, it's interesting, we talked about the year-round economy, yet when we did our resident sentiment survey and did our destination management plan, the community said, stop marketing year-round.
Yep, I saw
we
that.
want to have some quiet time in the off-season, yet my businesses are like, yeah, we need to be busy. So this balancing act is really what the chamber has kind of moved away from marketing. Marketing's a lever, but managing the whole ecosystem 365 days is really after COVID became front and center. I was going to say, we only have a couple minutes left, and I wanted to give you each about 30 seconds to tell us, why should the residents vote for you? Why am I voting for you?
I think, like Scott, I agree we need a change in leadership. I think we need some new ideas. I'm a business owner, so I have a vested interest in the tourism economy, but I think fundamentally we have a housing problem. And I think we need someone with some background in policy, and we need to be getting more creative with our policy. We're currently between indecision and just focusing on these large macro projects. There's a lot of opportunity to get creative with policy. They're not going to solve everything, but we can alleviate pressure points, and just if we get creative across policy and have people in charge who have a background in public policy and have the willingness to make tough decisions and actually move our community forward, because right now we're kind of just drifting out to sea, it feels like.
Thank you.
I was born and raised here. This is my home and always will be. I have deep roots in this community, and I want to make sure that the tree that is Aspen will continue to thrive. And for me, this is about creating some unity for community prosperity so that we can all raise up. I think that rising tides rises all ships, and I'm ready to work together with all the stakeholders in Aspen to make that happen.
I've really enjoyed talking to you guys. I wanted to get to culture. I wanted to talk about the Aspen Area Community Plan. I wanted us to touch on daycare. But you both have been so delightful, and I really appreciated you being here. Thank you both for your thoughtful responses. It's clear that Aspen's future is in good hands with passionate individuals like you willing to serve. As you can see, both candidates bring a unique perspective and ideas to the table. Local elections are the cornerstone of our democracy, and your voice really does matter. Remember, Aspen City Council election will take place on March 4th with early voting starting February 18th. Ballots are going to be mailed on February 10th. Make sure you vote and stay engaged in shaping the community. Thank you for joining us today on Aspen Affairs. I'm Debbie Braun, and I look forward to seeing you next time as we continue to explore the issues that impact Aspen businesses and residents. Have a great day.